Okay, so we're going to pick up again where we left off with the last video. And this one's going to be talking mostly about aging and as you get older, like kind of what happens with your body. Remember, I've already kind of hinted to when we've had our discussions about COVID-19 and why it's been affecting the older generation so much. I pretty much stated to you that as you get older, your body slows down. So you don't have the same immune responses that you have at the age of, like 22, 23. And so there's a lot of things that can actually go into this. And most of it's going to be, especially for when it comes to immune responses, but in general, they're going to involve a limit on cell reproduction. So essentially, your body slows down, doesn't make as many cells. So you lose cells, and then that's it. Okay? So anytime cells die, you don't have as much to be able to go ahead and remake them and be able to use them. There's also some environmental factors. A lot of times people that age worse than others are because they're either in an area where they were exposed to pollution or, thinking about you see the grandma who spent too much time in the tanning bed, seeing how their skin has been affected. That's an environmental factor. Viruses and aging genes. Some people just have the genes to age better than others. And that's just how it is, unfortunately. So that's kind of a situation there. There's also the other thing is that there's going to be the mitochondria will start to degenerate, and essentially they'll be kind of get progressive damage that can occur. This will happen usually from free radicals that occur within the atmosphere naturally. They do protect us from a lot of different things, but also from being exposed to pollution. Okay, so this is just showing you the idea here. So essentially, when you have this, a lot of times too, whenever you're going through the normal situation of cellular respiration, the last portion is going through an electron transport chain to produce all of this ATP. But when you do that, a lot of times you produce free radicals. Okay, and so essentially, as you get older, all of these free radicals have to get out of the mitochondria somehow. And so they can't all go out the same way the normal regular stream that you see over here occurs. And so therefore you start getting issues where the free radicals start to break down the mitochondria. Okay, so there's going to be a couple different effects on aging. So the first one is going to be the skeletal system. So your bone mineral density will decrease. So therefore, your calcification of your bones, your bones become weaker essentially. And so therefore, this can lead to an increase of fracture. It's why, you ever talk about you hear your grandmother fell, and the first thing you think, oh my gosh, she broke her hip. That is because of this fact that your bone mineral density is less, and therefore you have weaker bones as you get older. This also allows for people, as they get, as they age more, a lot of times they'll shrink. So instead of, like I said, you don't grow anymore, but you may shrink a little as you get older. So that's something that can occur. You can also see a lot of times too, where it's harder for them to hold up their heads. They'll kind of be hunched over. And that's because of the fact that they have this bone minerals that cannot bones that cannot hold them up. One way that we can decrease that a little bit is to make sure that you're taking adequate calcium intake throughout your life and making sure you have good exercise. Okay, so this is just showing you kind of what you're losing there. Within the muscular system, muscle mass is going to decrease as you get older. So again, decreases by about 90%, and then you go down to 50 and continuing and so forth and so forth. Again, this is because, again, you're not using, you probably are still using those muscles, but the problem is that you can't make the cells that you're needed to make the muscle fibers, and therefore, as we age, because they're not being reproduced as much, you could lose it. Now, the one way to make sure that you gain that stuff is to make sure you exercise. Okay? However, a lot of people don't exercise, and therefore that's why they have the issues that they do. So basically, following the rules of being healthy will help you age better. It's kind of the whole moral of the idea here. Okay. So again, this is the interglutamenary system. This is going to be your skin. Okay. So a lot of times your skin will become drier and almost flaky. And a lot of times it can become crinkly. The best idea. In addition, it's kind of inelastic. It's kind of crinkly. I think you get a lot of wrinkles and skin folds. Within the hair, your hair no longer is the same hair color. It turns to a pretty gray. Yes, the pretty gray. That indicates everybody says, "Oh my God, I found a gray hair." My husband says I've given him 20 gray hairs since we had the baby. So, so he's like, "Yeah, I have a lot more grays than I started with this." So that's an indication of aging. Probably I'm speeding up his aging process right now. Okay, urinary system. So this is going to be reduce the ability to produce urine. And then there's also the issue of the bladder, like the muscles that are around the bladder weaken, and therefore you have less control over the ability to choose when you are going to pee. And so therefore, basically, you're not going to always, a lot of times, you're not going to be able to avoid it completely. You're not going to be able to choose when you're going to go and when you're not going to go. You laugh or sneeze and a little bit comes out. That's going to be a situation of the effect of aging. And it's because of the fact that you have a weakened muscles around your bladder area. Okay. The respiratory system, again, so your cartilage becomes a little bit more calcified, and therefore it's a little bit harder for you to breathe. It's usually not too terrible. Usually you can, as long as you're taking, it can be a little bit more difficult. It's not until you get older that they become more difficult in general. And that's when you have more of a loss of muscle tissues. And therefore, that's because of the fact that you would decrease the strength of the respiratory muscles. So your respiratory efficiency will decrease. So cardiovascular system. So there's a couple different things that can happen. So you can have essentially a lot of times people will develop degenerative heart conditions or blood vessel disease. So essentially what happens is that you get fatty deposits along the blood vessel wall, which doesn't allow for as much blood to flow through your body. And so a lot of times you can get essentially issues within blood flow to your feet or to your legs or to your hands. And this can cause the atherosclerosis, which is just basically more issues with your bones, because of the fact that you don't have enough, enough blood going to your system. This also means it can also affect the blood vessels that are going back to your heart, and therefore you can have a heart attack. So it can lead to that. In addition, we can also have this thing called hypertension that'll occur, which is when they're basically you have higher blood pressure, and that means the blood's going too fast to get to places. Okay, so these are going to be your sense organs. So most of your sight, smell, taste, a lot of those. So your sense organs, they're going to gradually decline in performance and capacity with aging. So a lot of times you can lose your ability to hear things properly. You can lose your sight, as most of the two common ones that you will see a lot of that. So these are just some of the examples of different types of eye diseases. So the first one, you can have farsightedness, which is just basically going to be caused by the hardening of lens. You get cataracts, essentially loss of lens transparency, so they're no longer transparent for you because you do have lenses within your eyes. This isn't like, we're talking about contact lenses. These are the lenses within your eyes. And the loss of transparency within those lenses, essentially they kind of almost fog up. So think if you're wearing glasses and you see things fogging up, that's essentially what's happening in your eyes on a permanent basis. Okay, and a glaucoma is going to be an increased pressure within the eyeball. You can also have decreased hearing, and you can also have decreased taste. I can tell you that decreased taste is not something that people state as much. Most of the time you notice if your grandmother can't hear you, or you notice if you see a cataract of some sort. But the decreased taste does occur as well as you get older. Okay. So basically the reproductive system. So there are some benefits to aging. So again, reproductive system, your fertility is going to decrease. Things will start to slow down. Now that doesn't slow for women. That's much more noticeable. You go through menopause. Once you go through menopause, you're not really fertile at all anymore. You can't get pregnant. But males also do see a little bit of a situation. Women just experience it more. They go through hot flashes and things along those lines through menopause. But men, they kind of don't get the same sexual responses that they get when they're in their 20s and 30s. We'll put it that way. They don't get an erection. The erection can be a little bit more difficult to get, and therefore it might be like they don't want to have sex as much. They'll still produce sperm, so they can still get somebody else pregnant that's much younger, but they can't get someone of the same age pregnant because women go through menopause and they're no longer able to get pregnant. And then when it comes to the benefit of aging, so kind of like almost like the wisdom idea. So you get this improved brain functions, and so therefore you're like less anxious or fearful, and you're like more happy because of it. Because you kind of you're like, I've lived my life at this point, I can figure it out. The best interpretation, you also get better interpretation of visual information. So that would be problem solving, any type of wisdom that you might have. Okay, so a lot of times you have different causes of death. For us, it's mostly heart disease. We also have cancer and stroke. Those are the leading causes in America, in the United States. But in developing countries, you actually get more severe infectious diseases such as HIV, diarrheal disorders, malaria, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously, you also have the situation of, just an accident occurs and something happens, or you have Alzheimer's and something along those lines happens. Those are the leading causes of death within the United States. Okay, so just examples there shows kind of what is the most leading cause of death. Still in the United States is heart disease. Like I said, those are pretty much the same, but you can see a lot of stuff has increased as we've, become more, known, I guess, to state the best way. Different ways to treat things. We've actually been able to diagnose more things, so there probably was the same amount of actual causes of deaths. We just didn't know what the death was caused by. Okay. So again, this is going to be situations of early pregnancy and development. Again, preeclampsia. That's going to be high blood pressure during pregnancy. Birth defects. You can get some disorders, which we'll talk about in a little bit more in the next section of set of PowerPoints or set of presentation videos. You can get some placenta previa, which essentially means the placenta is blocking the ability for the baby to exit the body, so you get a little bit of bleeding. You can also get postpartum disorders, like you can get lactose intolerant, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So I'm going to go for the rest of the videos for this semester. This will be, again, mostly the final will be on these presentations.